Hey, it's Chris from The Chris Stefanic Show. We dive into how to live a more joyful life every day, the kind of life that God created you for. Check it out. These near-death experiences, how long have people been talking about these things? Obviously, it's different now because they're well recorded.
I mean, it goes back, of course, 2,000, 3,000 years. We see literary examples of people who think they, had an experience. But recently, starting with basically a book called Life After Life that was written by Raymond Moody.
Life After Life.
Yeah, that was way back in 75 or 76. Moody wrote this book, but it was based on Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's previous studies that had been published in 1973-74, which showed that a significant number, she was studying death and dying, and a significant number of her patients were actually having this experience of, a spirit soul leaving their body, and, they would go various places, right? I mean, one lady goes right outside the hospital room. She's looking at the hospital from the outside, looking at the hospital from the third floor, says, oh, there's a tennis shoe there with a worn left toe and with a shoelace underneath the heel. And so one of the researchers for one of the doctors actually crawled out on that ledge, found the tennis shoe there exactly as described. So it's like they can do a lot of things, but the point that you're making is that it's very, very difficult to explain how any of this veridical data could possibly be accurately explained 100%. Wow. If you didn't have a soul body that was doing it. And the brain anyways, flat EEG, I mean, if there's no electrical activity in the cerebral cortex, you ain't doing anything.
No, totally.
Right, and if there's no electrical activity in the visual and auditory cortices, you're not doing anything, seeing or hearing. So let's cancel that to begin with, blind or otherwise.
Yeah.
But the point is pretty clear that something is going on, but it's resuscitation. That's what started the whole thing off. And so when resuscitations became very commonplace, and that was in the late 60s, then all of a sudden you see these reports because people would come back from their heart attacks. And previously, maybe 2, 3, 4% might, but all of a sudden now when you get 60% coming back, you're getting a boatload of data that you never had before.
Wow.
And so this provoked Raymond Moody to write that first book, that kind of got so many scientists involved. Bruce Grayson started an entire program at the medical school at the University of Virginia, just really devoted to near-death experiences in their department of cognitional studies and brain studies. And then Mario Beauregard who was a neurophysicist, got into the act because, as a neurologist, he's trying to see whether any of the physicalist explanations can work. And he wrote that very famous book, Brain Wars. Brain Wars, because, the physicalists versus the transcendentalists, basically. Transcendentalists believe in a soul. And he is, of course, a transcendentalist. And he was lining up with Grayson and Van Lommel and, Parnia and a group of scientists like that. So they started studying this even more diligently with longer term longitudinal studies with very, very high standards that, for example, were published in peer-reviewed medical journals like The Lancet. That's the #1 medical journal in Great Britain. And that journal actually published the 2003 von Lommel studies, which show conclusively not only that blind people see, but that the veridical data is so overwhelming.
Wow.
People coming in and saying, well, I went to the waiting room next door and I heard all of my relatives discussing me,
Wow.
So I came back and I told them, hey, what you were saying about me there, that's not fair. By the way, you were wearing one of my
Watch what you say when grandma dies.
Be careful what you say about the deceased. So, so many of these stories. I mean, one guy, this nurse comes in and says, oh, Mr. So-and-so, we lost your dentures. No, you didn't. The nurse who came into the room just before you put the paddles on me, actually took, my dentures out of my mouth, and she opened the door in the OR underneath the machine that looks like this, and threw the dentures in there and slammed them. If you find that the nurse,
you'll find my dentures.
You'll find my dentures, and sure enough, but this happens like 24/7 all the time on these things, which is
incredible.
I know.
I think the strongest argument of the physicalists would be that as the oxygen is leaving your brain, you might have a dream-like trance state, which within seconds you could have a dream. Yeah. But the data that shows that people accurately report things outside their bodies really is a good smackdown to that.
It is.
To that argument.
The other thing, there's two other really major things. The first is, of course, your brain is very active if you're having dreamlets, or if you're suffering from an anoxia, right, a lack of oxygen in the brain, something of that nature. The brain is exceedingly active. It's struggling to maintain. Whereas in a near-death experience, it's the exact opposite. Flat EEG, not an active brain that is, taking place. So, I mean, how are you going to explain a dreamlet or, a hallucination makes the brain very, very active if it's a genuine physical hallucination. But in a near-death experience, there's no real brain activity going on at all, except for, like I said, a few sputterings in there in the very lower.
Did you like that clip? Be sure to click subscribe so you never miss out on our great content that's going to help you live life to the full.